Alright nerds, this is That Just Happened. This is the sister show to the news show because we like to talk about the things that we actually interacted with. This week, well this past 2 weeks, we have Super Mario, Miss Maisel, Succession, we have some live music to talk about, we have some first look at some movie stuff and things, and let's just roll into it, shall we? Okay, so again, a little better of an explanation before we get into the things that just happened. We have, with the news, once a thing happens, because we report on here at Generally Nerdy, we report on pop culture events, effectively. So when a movie comes out, we might keep tabs on it for a while and see how the box office does and see how the critical and the fan reception and that kind of things are. But that's very impersonal. That's not like, this is what I think about the thing. Also, I am a one-man show. I do all of my editing and music and everything, all of the things, I do it all myself. So it's very difficult for me to put together a proper review. Also, I have a day job, which makes it difficult to if I were to want to do a proper review, which we do from time to time, but it makes it very difficult for me to get into movie theaters, for me to go out and get new music. Makes it very difficult. Well, the TV thing's a little easier because I can do that at home, but difficult for me to interact with things in pop culture in a timely manner in which a proper review would make sense. So, as a means to still maintain the conversation, as a means to still create conversation around good pieces of art or things that are relevant to the conversation in my eyes, that's what this show is for. We get to talk about all of the things, regardless of how long ago the thing came out or whatever other circumstances. This is just what happened. This is the things that we got to interact with. And in the comment section, if you went and did see a brand new movie that we're not talking about here, then let us know, man. Let the community know. Let's have the conversation. Convince me that it's worth the time because it takes a lot of convincing to get my girlfriend to go do certain things in pop culture outside of music. And so, like, give me fuel for that conversation so that we can go out and see the brand new movies and stuff. So yeah, that's what this is. That's a little bit of a rambling explanation, but let's get into what just happened. So first up, let's talk about Super freaking Mario passing $1 billion. I finally got to watch it. It's basically what I was expecting. I was very careful to not get into any of the like super spoilery stuff. But this is like, I totally understand because it does enough fan service for the people my age who've been playing it since Mario was on the NES or the NES, I guess the kids are calling it these days. So since I had my my Nintendo Entertainment System, not even my Super, since I was about 6 years old, or 4 years old rather, when the Nintendo came out and had a Nintendo and have been playing Super Mario Brothers ever since that, this does all of the fan servicey things, but also acknowledges everything in the franchise and does all of the stuff so that more modern fans, people who have picked it up since, obviously more recently than me, can also get into it, but also does enough so that, like, children, because the target audience of this movie is families with small children, does enough in the realm of keeping children interested, because you have zany characters, you have bright colors, you have fast motion, the kinds of things that people under the age of 8 are drawn to. That it even, like, you couldn't have planned, I mean, I guess they did plan this, but you couldn't have pictured a better outcome for a family-oriented movie. This movie does all of the things and does them maybe not the best, but well enough that it's like, this was fun. I'm gonna see it again and again and probably again, it would seem, because they again have crossed over $1 billion. This is easily the biggest video game movie ever, and well freaking deserved. Absolutely. Let's move on from Mario. I'm done gushing, I promise. Next up, we have Marvelous Miss Maisel, episodes 4 and 5. Episode 6 has come out as I am filming this. I just haven't watched it yet. But God, this show, I'm so sad it's going. We still have a lot to figure out with Maisel. We still have a lot to, how exactly, oh no, I take that back, because we got that in the most recent episode, how Joel got arrested, why Joel was in prison, why we're doing the weird time jump stuff, and why the change in format, I feel like is something, personally, because of my ADD and like the OCD associated with that, kind of needs to be addressed, but probably won't be. It's very strange. You have 4 seasons done in a certain way, and then the 5th season changes that way, and it's the final season. So like, I don't know, it just feels the disjointedness. I feel like episode 5, was it 5 was the last one? Yeah, episode 5 does well. The disjointedness is getting better in episode 5. I like the telling stories aspect, the oral history of Maisel, if you will, aspect from people who are associated with her but haven't necessarily been a big part or even a part of the show up until this point. That I thought was really cool and works a lot better than these really jarring time jumps. So hopefully episode 6 kind of steers also away from the time jumps, maybe in a different way. But yeah, very, very much this show, man. Oh, I think we've had the conversation before of telling stories in such a way, or making TV shows, movies, comic books, video games, what have you, telling any sort of pop culture story like Maisel is doing. If you want to do that, and you also want to, and I'm going to use inflammatory language to prove, to illustrate the point, but if you want to tell the story in modern society, whether or not it's a period piece is fairly irrelevant, but you want to tell that story, and you also want to virtue signal, you also want to show all of your progressive friends that just how progressive you are because you're telling a story that is progressive. The progressive nature of the story should not be the focus. Maisel is a prime example of that, because such a woman kind of sort of did exist to a much smaller degree in the time period that they're talking about. And somebody's going to correct me in the comments, I know, but in the larger pop culture conversation, women like Maisel in the 50s, 60s, and I believe we're into the 70s in some of the time jumps, they were few and far between. So, and also rising to the level that she eventually gets to, where we're, again, some of the time jumps, even fewer and further between. So this is, by nature, a very progressive story to be telling. And Amy Sherman Palladino, the showrunner for this, who also did Gilmore Girls and there was something else. But Gilmore Girls was very, very progressive, was very liberal in its politics. And I still like that one a lot. Because it's so well written and so well done in so many ways. Cinematography for Gilmore Girls couldn't hold a candle to the cinematography of Maisel. Cinematography in Maisel has no right to be this good when the writing is this good. So yeah, I definitely, there is a lot of good about this, and that going back to my point. That's how you do that. Let's contrast and compare Velma to Marvelous Miss Maisel. Velma has an installed fan base because it is based on a huge property. It's based on Scooby-Doo. Who doesn't love Scooby-Doo? Very few people don't love Scooby-Doo. If you know about Scooby-Doo, you probably have some sort of appreciation for Scooby-Doo. Marvelous Miss Maisel is telling an all-original story about time in our country's past that is very dangerous to tell stories in, considering modern social politic. So these two things should not have turned out the way they did based on that information, because Velma, again, large installed fan base, and then they did everything they could to piss off that installed fan base as a means to attempt to garner new fans to something that if you didn't already know what it was, then you probably don't live in a country that's going to get Velma. Like, that's just such a bad decision. And this is probably one of the more progressive, woke, liberal, whatever the hell you want to call it. Velma was that. That is exactly why they did the things that they did, is because they wanted to show how progressive they are, and they wanted to do the thing. Maisel? Amy Sherman Palladino, again, I am 99.998% sure that Amy Sherman Palladino is liberal. Votes Democrat, like probably exclusively Democrat, and no independent or otherwise at all. Like, but that's irrelevant, because she has created a piece of art. She has created a story that is so compelling and incredibly funny, and incredibly well written, and incredibly well filmed. Like, the cinematography, again, in this show is so mind-blowing at times. But, like, just, this shouldn't have done well if you want to believe the popular narrative that female-led stories don't do well, or progressive stories always, like, review bombed. Like, that's a thing, right? This is a female-led story with one of the secondary characters, one of the main secondary characters, is obviously a lesbian, and is bucking so many trends that, like, it just hurts my head trying to explain the difference between these two things. Velma is garbage. Maisel is phenomenal. And I don't understand why the creative engine behind Maisel is not the more popular creative engine. It's easy to take something and pervert it and do the thing in such a way that it no longer resembles where it came from. It is incredibly difficult to create something brand new and garner the kind of following and fan base that it did. Sure, there is a bit of nuance there that I'm probably glancing over, in that Amy Sherman Palladino has herself a very built-in audience, because, again, Gilmore Girls was a thing, and, again, other shows that she's been associated with. So it's not exactly apples to apples, but, I mean, come on, man. Like, you see what I'm saying, right? Let's move on. I'm just going to keep talking in circles. Next up, we're going to talk about Succession. Again. This one, I honestly feel like, and I don't know the demographics because I don't care, because I don't look into it. I just see a thing that is doing well very, very across the board in the social climate. And also a thing that is legitimately deserves the praise that it's getting. That is Succession. Episodes 4 and 5, the details are what they are. Like, is Kendall, before we move past this, is Kendall brilliant or lucky? Like, honestly, that argument with, oh Lord, what is the character's name? Matsson. The argument with Matsson at the party, like, the hell was he thinking? Was that planned? Was he drunk? Like, is all of the sudden Kendall like some sort of brilliant mastermind? Did he get that from his dad and we just haven't seen it because he's been so insecure and unsure of himself up to this point, and now he's finally becoming this character that he could have been up throughout the entirety? Did it take the loss of his father to become, like, that is such an interesting character dynamic. I still think Kieran Culkin is the reason to watch this show, though, because he's just having way too much fun in this show. But again, this is something that I think I don't know necessarily that conservative pop culture fans are necessarily into Succession. I could be wrong, because there is a very conservative bias in bias is probably not the right word. Very conservative bent to a lot of the way that they're representing the Roy family. Obviously, they're making Shiv the very liberal one. She's the one who did campaign stuff with the Democrat president president nominee in the show, and so she's their tie to the left, as it were. And then in the more recent episode, we see just how wish-washy corporate media can be. I don't know that that's necessarily a representation, an accurate representation anyway. That's probably their attempted representation of people on the conservative side, but I don't think it's accurate. But I think it's very accurate of corporate media. I think it's very, very accurate of most large media sources, be it TV, internet, or otherwise. That they'll just kind of, whatever benefits them, it doesn't necessarily matter what the politics are involved. But I think that there is a lot there that they're in this story that they're telling that would appeal to more conservative-minded viewers, because it confirms the media bias situation in the entertainment world, at least. It confirms, it shows these things that I'm sure are very much inflated because it is a show, it is done by Hollywood and so on and so forth. But still, if they're willing to admit to certain things in this fashion, it kind of shows you what because they have consultants on this show. They do all kinds of research, and they see these things. There are people associated with the actual events that they've modeled certain events in the show after, that they use as consultants that inform the writing so that there is a semblance of reality in the writing for the show. So yeah, I feel like this is, obviously it's huge from what I've seen. Again, I don't really pay super close attention, but from what I've seen, it's very huge with more progressive, liberal outlet types. So, and Nerdwriter 1, great channel. He does amazing video essays on basically everything. He did a video on this a few years ago. I think around about season 2, he made a video about Succession, about the dialogue and the excellent writing of this show, and how just it's perfect for the show that it is. And he's very liberal, and so that's kind of my prime example of why I feel the way. But I think this is a slept-on gem as far as more conservative types are concerned. I haven't really seen a whole lot of coverage for Succession outside of the announcement of the final season in the more conservative pop culture media outlets. So I think this is something that people on that side should take notice of, because while it's not made for them specifically, I don't think it's made for the people on the other side specifically either, and that's a good thing. So yeah, let's move on, because I'm just going to continue. Oh God, yeah, speaking of politics. And Miss Maisel, it would seem. Alex Borstein, who plays Maisel's manager, again, names are so easy for me to brain fart. Alex Borstein also does the voice of Lois on Family Guy, and she was Miss Swan. She was on Mad TV. Alex Borstein is a comedic voice that I gravitate towards. I think she's hilarious, generally speaking. I think she's great. She put out a comedy special on Amazon Prime called Corsets in Clown Suits. I watched that, and I did a short that I think went live during the week off, about the politics of a streaming platform should not be known. Should not be a thing that I really waste much time with. They can have politics. I'm not saying don't be active politically. I'm just saying don't ram it down your audience's throat, because then you're going to alienate at least half of them. So it just seems counterintuitive in a business standpoint. But Alex Borstein's Corsets and Clown Suits, about 80% of this was great. I loved it. She has a really good singing voice, and it's kind of the showcase of her new musical entity thing, group, something. So that was awesome. I really dug that. But there's a lot of really misguided politics in here, and I feel she's making points that have been debunked by a lot of like legitimately central like news fact checker source types. Also, she's making a lot of points that if you literally just do maybe an hour's worth of research on like any of this, you can see just how surface level a lot of the points that she makes and a lot of her contemporaries make are. So that got a little frustrating, but by and large, I really, really dug it. She, again, is a comedic voice that I just absolutely love. And so go watch it. I'm not saying not to watch it. Just be aware if you are slightly more conservative, there's going to be a little bit of, there's going to be some irritants in the stand-up. Continuing on, because we have to make this a little quick, we have Eddie Izzard. We got the first look for Eddie Izzard's Dr. Jekyl and Mr. Hyde. I'll see if I can get, I think it was from Entertainment Weekly, so it should be pretty easy to find for the edit of this video. But we talked about this when it was announced, and I was like, oh my God, that's freaking brilliant, because Eddie Izzard, Izzard, I think is how I'm supposed to say his, their last name. Notoriously, for as long as I've ever known about Eddie, at the time it was transvestite was the term, and very much embraced the term. Eddie did, and now Eddie has come out as being gender fluid. Some days there are boy days, some days there are girl days. I think I'm using the terminology in a non-inflammatory way because I really, 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 really respect Eddie Izzard. I think Eddie is one of the best comedic voices. Speaking of comedic voices, one of the best comedic voices to have come out ever, of all time. Like, he's going to go down with some of the greats, I think. Assuming the social politics of the current time don't weigh Eddie down any more than they already have, because I think Eddie excels beyond politics. I think the voice that Eddie gives is so unique and deserving to be heard that these social trappings around Eddie are unfair, regardless of how they benefit anyone's narrative. So. But the thing we're talking about is the pictures of Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. Of course, Dr. Jekyll is the woman persona and Mr. Hyde is the male persona. They could have done a Jekyll and Hyde scenario and made Jekyll the male, but they didn't, because Hyde is the negative force. So modern Hollywood, negative force is always male, right? But I'm still super stoked about this movie. I love seeing Eddie is a brilliant actor. I think he's highly underutilized and just incredibly good on his feet, or on their feet. So yeah, beautiful, beautiful. I'm super excited about it. Let's move on. Next we have, live music. I've gone to a couple of concerts over the course of the last week. Honestly, next time we talk, I will have gone to another one as well. That is Placebo. But the two that I have been to since we last spoke were Cursive and Skinny Puppy. Both bands, so Cursive, I really have zero appreciation for. Though, after seeing them live, my girlfriend loves them, art school is a thing. Seeing them live gives me a very different appreciation. Gives me some appreciation for them. Just seeing how hard they work and seeing, I'm stumbling over myself. I've been doing all video, but, so they come from a scene, an adjacent scene anyway, to a place where I come from, in that I very much was into hardcore and metal, and they're emo, but a little on the hardcore side of emo, so like it's a very interesting dichotomy of sounds. This was technically the second time I saw them, because years and years ago I saw them open up for Marilyn Manson, which is a very different sound. But it was a thing that, and there's a possibility I'm remembering that incorrectly, but I don't think so. This was a very different experience seeing Cursive, because I'm a much more mature and critically minded appreciator of music. So like I honestly can listen to just about anything and see things that I can learn from or that I can appreciate or something along those lines. Back when I saw them open for Manson, it wasn't the case. I was a pretty shitty teenager, but so yeah, that helped, but I'm still not a fan. But that's all. I don't know. It's an interesting tour that they're on. They're doing. I don't remember the name of the record. They're doing. It's like their first record or their first label record or something along those lines. From front to back, it's a short record, so there's a bunch of extra songs thrown in there. And it was. I mean, my girlfriend loved it. She prefers the Ugly Piano. Or Ugly Organ, I think is the name of the record that came out after the one that they're touring. And they did a couple of tracks off that, so she was pretty stoked. Again, obviously had a very exciting experience, but it was interesting nonetheless. And then our other piece of live action music that I got to see was Skinny Puppy. So I've been a passive listener of Skinny Puppy for some time. Slightly more active since Ogre was in Repo the Genetic Opera, as well as the Alleluia movies. Kind of brought them up a bit on my radar. And I've never been super into Skinny Puppy. I think even though I acknowledge that without them, there is not a lot of the industrial music that I do love, I still just, like, that's about as much appreciation as I have for Skinny Puppy. Seeing them live was seeing any band live is always going to change your view of them. Oftentimes seeing a band live and seeing that they can't actually do the things that they do in studio up on stage changes it for the worse. But both Cursive and Skinny Puppy, seeing them live and Cursive just reproducing their sound on stage that they created in the studio was really cool. Skinny Puppy, like, it's difficult to not recreate the sound that you did in studio with an outfit like Skinny Puppy, because so much of it is computers. Like, yeah, all you have to do is push play on the sound and it sounds exactly now as it did then. So that kind of is not a worry. The interesting part, the thing that gives you a better appreciation for a band like Skinny Puppy live is the performance, the actual stage antics of them doing the music. And Ogre is an artist. And I use that as kind of half epithetical because, like, as much as I like to consider myself an artist in a lot of ways, I don't associate with people generally in the stereotypical artist mindset, because they get on my nerves because they take themselves entirely too seriously. They want to imbue meaning to their art when, in my eyes, at the very least, art's meaning is up to the person consuming the art, not the person creating the art. So when an artist creates a painting and it's some big protest piece that the art has imbued with this meaning that they're protesting the thing that they're protesting, that is only the artist's perspective. If it's a garbage piece of art and they think it's this big, powerful statement, the garbage is going to show through more than the statement. And that is something that artists don't know and don't care about. The theoretical artist in this argument. I think Ogre, Mr. Nivek Ogre, aka Kevin Ogilvy, I think Ogre straddles the line of legitimate, I want to create things and I don't care how they're perceived, and then also I'm an artist and I'm important. Like, he straddles that line very, very well. And also throughout the course of this live performance, I have learned, well, throughout the course of seeing them live and then getting a little bit more into them and doing a little bit more wikiing and research and stuff, Ogre is not the driving force. I always assumed Ogre was to Skinny Puppy what Trent Reznor was to Nine Inch Nails, and that's not the case. It's the other Kevin, Seven. I can't remember what his stage name is, but the guy who does all of the synths and stuff. It's his baby, and Ogre was brought in early, but still brought into the project. So it's not he's not the originator of the idea of what Skinny Puppy is. At this point, I think the two of them are so closely joined that it doesn't matter, but just an interesting thing that I've learned. And like, just the performance up on stage, it was this really cool stage production. It was like watching a performance at some big Broadway production. It's probably giving it a little bit more credit than it actually is due, but that's the general feeling I think that they were going for. They were telling a story with the visuals on stage. It wasn't just a band performing music. And again, like, I've kind of slightly been aware of the style of performance that Skinny Puppy does for some time, because I've been aware of Skinny Puppy and seen videos of them live, but I've never actually watched an entire live performance of theirs, so it didn't really connect that there was a storytelling element. It just looked like really crazy visuals before. So seeing it all together as one whole thing definitely gives a better perspective for the band of Skinny Puppy. I still far prefer other things. Ministry, I think, is a superior industrial act that started around about the same time as Skinny Puppy, so they're equally as influential. I think the most important voice in industrial music is Nine Inch Nails, for many, many reasons that we could get into should anybody really want to. And also more modern industrial music like Lord of the Lost or even Rammstein, even though they're more on the metal side, but still very, very industrial. I think those voices kind of overpower the voice of Skinny Puppy, but that doesn't make them any necessarily more important than Skinny Puppy as far as the music goes. So yeah, it's just an interesting evolution of my perceptions because of seeing Skinny Puppy live. That, and then our final piece for That Just Happened. I had to talk about this. We talked about it in the most recent news episode, but we're going to talk about it again, and that is Dune Part 2 dropping the trailer finally. What can I say about this trailer? My heart swells. I am so very excited for November, just like I was when Part 1 launched, like maybe even more so. Having seen what Denis Villeneuve did with Part 1, like, I am that much more hype about Part 2. And I already know how it's going to end. I already know all of the things because it's one of the greatest books ever written as far as the science fiction nerd is concerned. So yeah, I'm very, very excited to see what they do with Part 2. Even though I know the story, like, I want to see their interpretation of the story because I love their interpretation of the first part of the book. So yeah. That's what we got. That is what just happened, nerds. As far as going forward, before we speak next, again, like I said, I'm going to go see Placebo this weekend. Honestly, a lot of the stuff that I have planned is not necessarily pop culture related. I still have family issues that I'm working through. Also, that just happened for me. My grandma passed, and that's why we had a week off. And whew, that was a really rough week, but I appreciate everyone who reached out and gave me their condolences. It's much, much appreciated. But yeah, going forward, working through family issues, working through day job issues, going to see Placebo, and then we've got some shows that are going to be airing, so we'll probably continue the conversation around those. I don't know what else I have planned. Evil Dead Rise is on the horizon. Very likely will happen this weekend, so we'll have that to talk about as well, because Evil Dead franchise is a very interesting one as far as I'm concerned. So that's what we got going forward. What for you nerds has just happened? Let's have that conversation in the comments. If you experienced some of these things that we've talked about in this episode, then maybe continue the conversation, the back and forth down in the comments with me. Otherwise, just let me know what you did this past 2 weeks as far as the pop culture and the nerdy stuff is concerned. Also, oh God, we forgot about Free Comic Book Day. We'll talk a little bit about that on the next one. But yeah, that's what we got. Thank you very much for joining. If you haven't subscribed already, don't forget to do that. That way you get all of the videos and the things and the stuff, and comment, like, share, do all, whatever. It's YouTube. You know how it works. Before we go, always remember that if it's genuinely nerdy, it's probably here, and that just happened.